just heard about Meyer, I probably should tell you that I'm a member of AA. I'm here doing a report. No, I'm kidding. You'd be surprised how many AA meetings we have infiltrated by non-alcoholics who come from the University of Washington and other places, but and they're doing a study. So anyway, the only reason I'm up here is because, first of all, I love everything that I've heard about Meyer. I was a member of the orchestra about the same time that Ron Simon came in. I came in 1963 on a substitute basis, and I was a second violinist. And in those days, we call them the good old days because they're gone, and we don't have to go through them again. The second violins sat over where they're supposed to sit. In my opinion. But anyway, so I had to sit as a substitute. I had to sit in two sections. I had to sit in the viola section a couple of times, and that was gruesome. Not because of the other people in the section, but because of my inabilities as a viola player. But they needed bodies. And so I got stuck in doing the Rite of Spring was the first thing I ever played in the symphony on the viola. And anyway, so eventually I got sent over into the second violins. And if you know the setup of the symphony at all, it's the conductor, first violins, second violins, and in those days, timpani. And then brass over here, and percussion across the band. Oh my God, percussion. and as a sign from God, he wants to go through. And so Meyer was right behind me. And I had never played in the symphony. I had played in youth symphony up in front, where there were no percussion. But behind me was Meyer. And it was the very first rehearsal. And I turned around and I looked at him, just like this. He was so loud. All I saw was this. All I saw was this. And he never looked up. But when I turned around to look at him, he was looking at me. And I turned around as fast as I could. The next time I turned around to look at Meyer, he was scowling at me. And everywhere we went, from those days on, we went on trips to Tacoma. About once every 2 months we'd go down there after we played the series in Seattle Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday we'd go. And Meyer was, this is not a clever story, I'm just telling you this is what Meyer was like. He scowled at me everywhere we went. From the very first time I ever saw him, he scowled at me. And then I went to Vietnam and I came back and I got moved forward in the second violin section because in those days the law was that when you came back from the war, you got moved forward, you got promoted. So I got promoted to the center of the second violin section and sat with a lady named Rosalind Medley for 11 years. And I was so far ahead of Meyer, it made me so happy. And I was the one turning around and smiling. Anyway, I want you to know that the reason I'm up here was because two things happened with Meyer and me. Meyer came to work one day, and he brought with him some knitting that someone had made reference to the knitting. And I thought, here's a guy who plays timpani in the orchestra. Hello. I hate these things.
You're doing fine.
And where was I? Knitting. Oh yes, this is the 70-year-old brain. This isn't worth shit. And you guys scare me anyway because you're one of the most sophisticated audiences I've ever talked to. Except for the string section. I'm kidding. Anyway, so the knitting. Here's Meyer knitting, and he's, first, as far as I'm concerned, this guy is a real man. And he sits back there in the back of the orchestra. He makes all this racket, and people turn around, they scowl at him. He scowls right back at him. And he acts the same on the bus when we go someplace. He's arrogant and he's very intellectual. I can't remember what he was doing, but he was always he was in his own world, and he knew what he was doing was right. And so he comes to work with knitting, and I don't know what goes on in my brain or anybody else's brain, but I thought, what a cool idea. So I went to someone in the orchestra who I knew crocheted, and her name was Karen Bonavie, and she was a first violinist. And I said, how do you crochet? And she said, you start with this, and we got some kite string. And I started going around and around and around and around. And one day I had this thing was about this big. And it was a doily. And it was getting filthy because I kept making it and then taking it out. And Meyer was absolutely fascinated with this. to see this going on. This is the stuff that goes on in our universe every day. And so I'm working with this, and pretty soon, and this was pretty close to the time that Meyer left the orchestra. And at some point, I actually had made this thing so big that when I carried it around from one service to the next, I didn't have a bag for it, so I would throw it over my shoulder. And every time that it got a little longer, I got a bigger smile from Meyer. The really funny thing is that this went from knitting to crocheting, and the crocheting got bigger and bigger, and then I got bored with I finally made a tablecloth for home. My wife never brings it out. And Karen was the one who kept giving me new ideas and I did those, and it actually used 9,000 feet of kite string before it was. It took me 2 years to do it, but anyway, he's up there. I know he's laughing. So, or wherever he went, he's laughing. He was so mean to me. At the beginning of my tour in the orchestra, he was so mean to me. But I've talked to a lot of people since then who were in the orchestra when I first came in, and there were reasons that people were looking at me with scowls. I was rushing, I was playing sharp, and I was playing too loud. So over the years, I learned to do things right. Anyway, and then that went into quilt making. So thank you, Meyer. I made some beautiful quilts. They lay on people's beds in the orchestra. That was one way to get onto the beds of the beautiful with my quilts. Anyway, thank you, Meyer, for that. And then it was the bridge. Oh my God, the bridge with Ron, who taught everybody in the orchestra how to play bridge that he could. And Meyer was one of those guys. And the very first time I ever played bridge, it was Meyer, Ron, Serge, and myself. And I had never played bridge with anybody. And Ron had kind of given me the idea about how it works. You have 13 or 14 or 15 points in your hand, and you open with a club or a diamond or whatever. And if you open with one no, you've got big guns. And if he's across from you, you count your points. And if you have 3 points or less, you shut up. But if you have more than that, and then he had given me these instructions. So we sat down. I think we were on the bus, and Meyer opens with, he says, 1 no. And I'm sitting across him, and Ron is here, and Serge is here, and I looked at my cards, and I had 2 points. And I said, I pass. And Meyer jumps in just as fast as soon as he heard the word pass, he turns to Ron, he says, he can't do that! And then he said, can he do that? And Ron looked at my hand, peeked around at my hand, and he says, he can do that. So anyway, a great guy. You know, the things we don't do and the things that we do are there's no accounting for, about 6 months ago I found out that Meyer was in the rest home down on Martin Luther. And these are the things that we don't do that we wish we had done. And that was that I had this plan that I was going to go down and see him. And I was going to go down and see him. And I didn't. And now I'm very sorry that I didn't do that. But I'm glad that I'm here. I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.